Hello, okay, so this is part 3 of the Women Prescribed Sources series, let's call it a series, a trilogy. And this is going to be specifically related to sort of exam guidance or to do with the exam paper. It's worth pointing out that, as is the case with the Olympic stuff, because this is the third run, well, you'll be doing the third run, there are less questions on women and there are less questions than the Olympics than there would be on the third topic, which is, Athenian society. So what helps with the shortness of this video, this should be the shortest of the three. So it's just going to be very general guidance. We're not actually going to go through questions by answering them. I don't think we'll focus on specific examples of how questions have been answered. We can do that in class. But this is more general guidance and things to point out. So, on your literature and culture paper, you'll get 1, 2, 3, 6, 8 and 12 markers, and in terms of the weights, in terms of how your answers are going to be, your 1, 2 and 3 markers are basically going to be a point per mark, and they do seem, and we'll look at these examples, for example, but actually I'm not sure we do, because I think we focus specifically on prescribed sources in the next part, but that basically will tell you what you need from them. So it'll say, for example, give 2 examples for a 2-mark question. So that's basically your AO1. We talked a lot about AO2 previously in the previous videos. AO1 is basically your factual recall. And we might see an example, well, we will see an example. We're not going to focus on it in this video, but we'll see examples. And like I say, you need to come up with some information. Your 6 markers, okay, so these questions focus on your ability to select examples from the source material which has been included in the question paper insert. So when you get a paper, you'll get your exam paper which have the questions on it, and you'll get a separate booklet which will basically be the sources relevant to the questions in that booklet. Okay, another part of the exam will be to think outside of those sources, which basically means your prescribed sources booklet, which we went through in the first 2 parts of the video. But you'll get an insert which will have some sources which questions will be on. So the point of these 6 markers is to say, the question might be, what does source C tell us about the roles of Athenian women? Okay, and you'd have to have a look at source C and you'd have to answer the question based on that. Okay, so you will be assessed on the quality of the points made and the range and quality of the examples you select, i.e. from that source. The expectation, and I've not only bolded this but highlighted it, is that candidates will base their answer solely on the material they can glean from the source material provided. So we'll look at specific examples later, but the point is, as I said, it'll be like, look at source C and say how source C can help us answer this question. Based on the exemplar and other things, you basically need 3 points, maybe minimum, but that should be what you're looking for. 3 points to answer your question, and you're going to have to explain it, your point, with relevance to the question. Okay, so like I said, with whatever question I just asked about Athenian women, it would be, source C says, I don't know, that women spent their day weaving. Okay, and you'd have to utilise that quote with relevance to the question about their household duties. This is what a mark scheme looks like here, and it says, to get a level 4, which is 5 to 6 marks, you need very good engagement in the question, i.e. the points you pick out have to be relevant to the question. Okay, it draws and expresses a range of relevant points with development based on a range of well-selected aspects from the stimulus material, i.e. the bit from the insert that the question asked you about. In my example, it was source C, with well thought out discussion. Okay, so that's what you need for your top marks. Okay, 8 markers. It's kind of similar but also a bit different. Oh, where's he just gone? I can't read that if he's gone. Where's the info gone? I can't pause the video, that's not very ideal. What's just happened? Let's just move here in the hope that he comes back. Right, I don't know what's happened there. That's really not very ideal. Why can't we see it? It's just... Here we go. For your 8 markers, this is how we'd mark it, okay? It's important to note that this time you have marks for AO2, which we talked about previously, is describe knowledge and understanding of ancient sources, demonstrate knowledge, sorry. So that we saw a lot before. And for AO3, analyse, evaluate and respond to ancient sources. So you need to do a bit more with it. In terms of the marking, therefore, what you need to be looking for, there are 2 assessment objectives being assessed. Demonstrate knowledge and understanding of ancient sources, which will involve your limitations, and AO3, analyse, evaluate and respond to ancient sources. These 2 assessment objectives are equally weighted, either be 4 marks for AO2 and 4 marks for AO3. Examiners must use a best fit approach to the marking grid, which is here, where both the strengths and weaknesses in a particular response, particularly imbalance responses, etc. This is an important bit. Marks for AO2 should be rewarded for the detail and accuracy of the knowledge of the ancient sources they deploy in their answer, and we'll talk about this in a second, and the candidate's understanding of these ancient sources, including their interpretation and an understanding of their limitations. Now, the previous video spent loads of time talking about limitations, okay? Marks for AO3 should be awarded for how well the response is addressing the question / argued. It's important that your answer is relevant, answers the specific questions that are asked. This is basically exam technique that's relevant to all your subjects, particularly humanities. For candidates selecting relevant examples from the ancient sources they have studied, i.e. prescribed sources, which the previous 2 videos were on, and drawing and expressing conclusions based on selected examples in relation to the question posed. Candidates will be assessed on the quality of their conclusions and the points they make, and the range and quality of examples they've suggested. So here you go, to get your top marks, as it says, you need a detailed knowledge with good interpretations of the ancient sources and a good understanding of their limitations. This might involve stuff from the insert that you get, but will include your prescribed sources, okay? Well, the other part is a well-argued response to the question, which is supported by a range of well-selected examples. So say you had a question that was... Actually, is there an example of a question? Just got here for an 8 marker. Do I have an 8 marker in here? Here we go, look. Here's an example of a... Women were able to enjoy some degree of freedom in ancient Greece. How far do you agree with this statement? So for your AO3, you need to come up with a well-argued response to this, which has a range of points. And you might, for example, in that one, might want to say, well, Athenian women had this. They didn't have particular... What was the question again? Freedom. But Spartan women had this, and they had more freedom. Then you've got to pick relevant points to support your argument for both sides, okay? The response is logically structured with a well-developed, coherent line of reasoning. So, for each of these sources, you will see in the question, but here's an example, you should use sources in the insert and include details from other sources you have studied. What this means is you'll have your insert, which I talked about, okay, and you can use a source or 2 from that, and your own knowledge. What that means is what you see in the prescribed sources. And also we might look at some other examples which you may or may not wish to learn in addition as practice, okay? So, therefore, feel free to apply relevant sources from the insert to the question. You don't have to say, well, it's given me this, so I can't use it. No, you can use it. But it does also mean use your prescribed sources booklet, which the last 2 videos were on, which you've got, which I've given you the file for. These selections have to be relevant for the question, though. So you're looking for about 4 sources to answer this question. In the same way the last question was 3 sources with explanations, this is kind of 4 sources spread over the insert and other knowledge, i.e. your prescribed sources and anything else we study. You need to make sure they're relevant, you need to show your knowledge and the limitations of these, and these sources then need to be fit into a well-argued response to the question, okay? It's got to be relevant. There's your AO2, show your knowledge of the sources and the limitations, and there's your AO3, fitting them into a well-argued response. Always try to make sure, and as it says in the thing here, the response is logically structured with a well-developed and coherent line of reasoning. Okay? 12 markers. So this information at the top here, okay, suggests that the question is going to be a similar style to the 8 markers. In fact, if you look at that, it might actually be the exact same question, information. However, it should be noted that each 12 marker will involve this. To what extent do you agree? Using the sources you have studied, give reasons for your answer. In your answer, you should include references to a range of ancient sources. Emphasise range for a reason. You may wish to make limited use of the sources in the insert. So again, you can use your insert, but this is likely to be what they'll want you to limit that to maximum 2 from the insert. You may wish to include references to a modern way of life, and I think I talked about this in the previous videos. But when it says a range of ancient sources making references to it, that again can be using your prescribed sources knowledge or anything else we see. So as it says here, while you can use a source or maybe 2 from the insert, most of your sources have to come from prior knowledge, i.e. stuff that isn't in the insert, which is likely prescribed sources, plus maybe a few other things. This examiner's comment, what I'm about to read, highlights what you need to do to get full marks. Notice in particular the highlight paragraph at the bottom, okay? The 12-mark response, so this is actually with reference to a specific question, but it has general usefulness. The 12-mark response is started with a brief 2-line introduction stating that there were both advantages and disadvantages to life in Athens. And so I think the question was, well, probably to do with advantages and disadvantages of life in Athens. And the candidate then focuses the question by establishing the most crucial factor in determining the quality of life in the 5th century BC was social status and gender. So, first thing to point out about this is it's okay, but it might be good, to start with a very brief introduction in these 12-marker responses. The candidate considers several sources that focus on marriage and looks at the wife's lack of choice in a husband, as well as the task, so this is more specific to the question, she will be expected to perform, evaluating the points made with the phrase, "This demonstrates how." Clearly that's a key phrase to use, "This demonstrates how." It's showing your understanding, your explanations, it's showing your knowledge of limitations of a source, how it relates to a question, etc. And uses technical terms hetairoi and palakai in the context of men's relationships with women outside the formal confines of the household. This is contrasted with the status and advantages that citizen men enjoyed, and includes a reference to Aristotle and Aristophanes in a change of subject from the oikos to men's involvement in the politics of Athens. Okay, so here you can see that they've referred to certain authors. The paragraph ends with a reference to the need to pay citizens to attend the law courts and ecclesia meetings. Right, we're just going to skip on a bit because this is clearly quite related to the question specifically. Although note that the tragic source from the insert is included as a means of demonstrating this, it doesn't say that's a bad thing. You can use something from the insert. Okay, as I said, let's go to the important bit at the bottom. The response ends with a concisely phrased conclusion that draws the main points of the essay together. So like there was a short introduction, there's a short conclusion. The use of a huge range of sources, again, this is important, the detailed comments and explanations of the points made, so showing your understanding, your limitations, and fitting it to the question, together with the analysis of the evidence quoted, led to this response being credited full marks. So, in terms of you looking at your structure, you're looking at a short intro, lots of points which you need to demonstrate your understanding of, your knowledge of. They need to be well selected, there need to be a big range, they need to show, you need to show your limitations of it, and make sure it all is relevant to the question, and then a short conclusion. Okay, it was clear the candidate had fully engaged with the complexities of the question and demonstrated an excellent understanding of the arguments involved. So, This answer contained around 8 source references. When you're looking to answer these questions, this well-selected range, should look to include 8 to 10 sources. Okay? That's what you're looking for, 8 to 10 sources. And these are going to be from your prescribed sources, maybe a couple from the insert, and any other knowledge you might have. Sources references don't have to be too detailed. I'll give you an example of what they look like. So say what the source is, i.e. Aristophanes' Lysistrata 507 520. If you just say Aristophanes' Lysistrata, that's probably okay. So you need to say what it is. So you might say Aristophanes' Lysistrata, in a short description, expresses how women might be reluctant to complain about their husband's bad decision making. Okay, there's another reference. And then if you can, from memory, if it's a text, if it's not a text, then you probably just need to do your description a bit better. Do a quote if you can. We used to put up with whatever you men did in silence. Okay, so your little paragraph in your 8 to 10 sources might be like, Aristophanes' Lysistrata expresses how women might be reluctant to complain about their husband's bad decision making, as shown by we used to put up with whatever you men did in silence. This demonstrates how you could talk about then the limitations of this, about how this is a play and it's a comedy, etc. Like for the 8 marker, these things are important. Detailed knowledge with good interpretations of ancient sources and a good understanding of the limitations. I think I've made this quite important at this point. And well-argued response to the question, which is supported by a range of well-selected examples. So as I said, understanding, knowledge of limitations, a good selection, 8 to 10, that are well-selected and relevant to your question. And again, the response is logically structured with a well-developed, coherent line of reasoning. I hope all that makes sense. So we'll have a quick look at the past. These are all the questions about women that I've seen. We've got 3 examples here. We've got the June 2018, June 2019, and the spec paper. I'm not going to do the questions for you. I'm just going to show you how it works. So, source there. What I have done is, so this would be in the insert, okay? Initially, this would be in an insert, and you'd have an insert which is basically a separate booklet. And the question, I can't undo it, but it will refer to questions in the insert, parts of the insert, okay? So, is that she must run the household well. What task would a woman perform in the household? If you'll note, that's not actually anything to do with this source, okay? That's simply a factual recall question. This is your AO1. It's a 2-mark question, and it says, give 2 examples, okay? So that's how that question works. Source B. You'll note that source B, this question 3, which says study source B, because it'll be in the insert, is from the prescribed sources, okay? So some of the insert might be from the prescribed sources. This is the Spartan girl running, which we saw in the Spartan section of the prescribed sources. But what did Spartans hope to achieve by encouraging young girls to practice sports? Again, this question is basically a factual recall. It's saying give 3 reasons, is 3 marks. Question 5, however, is another question from something in the prescribed sources, which would also have been in the insert. What impression did you get of the relationship between the husband and wife in this source? Include specific references to source C in your answer. Now this is a 6-mark question. If we go back to the guidance, 6 markers. This question focuses on candidates selecting examples from the ancient source material included in the question paper insert, expressing conclusions based on the selected examples in relation to the question posed. Therefore, candidates will be assessed on the quality of the points they have made and the range of quality of examples they've selected. The expectation is that candidates will base their answers solely on the material they can glean from the source material provided. Okay? And you need 3 points. So for this is a 6-mark question. This is the information, and this is the source you're looking at to answer this question. You need to pick 3 points from this source that helps you answer that question. Question 6. This is an 8-marker. Women were able to enjoy some degree of freedom in ancient Greece. Maybe, is that, what was the, it doesn't matter. You should use, how far do you agree with this statement? You should use sources in the insert and include details from other sources you have studied. Now this is an 8-mark question. So remember your 8-mark questions. we saw how you'll read, you should use sources in the insert and include other sources you have studied, i.e. you're looking for 4 sources, as it says here, some from your insert and some from your prescribed sources, which is your prior knowledge. You might also have the prior knowledge, as I've said several times. You need to select sources that are relevant to this question. So if you pick a question here, women were able to enjoy some degree of freedom in ancient Greece, and I don't know, you pick something from the Olympics section, that's not relevant, is it? So you need to make sure you're picking relevant bits, okay? So as I said, you're looking for 4 sources, spread from the insert, from prescribed sources, anything else you've picked up. They need to be relevant. You need to show your knowledge of the sources and the limitations and fit these into a well-argued response to the question. Okay? So they're all your women-specific questions on from the question 2018 paper. You can have a go at these in your own time if you wish to help. And then there's a mark scheme. We're not going to go through it here. So yeah, okay. You can mark your own, or I can mark it for you at some point. Okay. Then June 2019. Study source A, Hetaira we keep for pleasure. What was an Hetaira? Okay. This is another bit of factual recall. It's an AL1. It's 1 mark. You need 1 point. Okay. Question 2. What does this source show about the duties that a husband performed? You're making 2 points. It's a 2 mark question. And the answers are in the source. Source B. So Xenophon Oikonomikos 3.11 to 3.13. This was in the insert. It's not in the prescribed sources, although a different part of Xenophon Oikonomikos is in the prescribed sources. But you've got a 1 mark question again. And if you actually look, it's not in here. Roughly how old would a bride have been when she got married? That's a factual recall section. Is there anyone with whom you talk less, around few or none, I confess? Why might an Athenian husband and wife not know each other particularly well? Give 3 reasons. 3 mark question. It tells you to give 3 reasons. Again, it's factual recall. Then source C is a 6 mark question. Study source C. In his speech to his new wife, how does the husband emphasise the positive aspects of their future life together? Include specific references to source C in your answer. So here you can see how your 6 mark questions are related to the source from the insert. You need 3 points. These 3 points need to come from the source itself. They need to be relevant to your question. Okay? You don't need any other knowledge. It says specifically, if we go all the way back, the expectation is that candidates will base their answers solely on the material they can glean from the source material provided, okay? So actually, you never need to look at this before to be able to answer the question. This is about developing your skills, and we'll do that. And you can answer these questions as part of that. Then we've got an 8 mark here. Life in 5th century BC Athens was easier for a woman than a man. How far do you agree with this statement? If we go over here, I think I wrote, did I write? I didn't, but it's often going to be how far do you agree, and it will always say, you should use sources in the insert and include details from other sources you have studied. You should use sources from the insert and include details from other sources you have studied. So, we talked about 4 points, some of which from the insert, some of which probably from your prescribed sources or any other knowledge that you've got, okay? These have to be relevant to the question. They have to show AO2 and AO3, so your knowledge of and understanding and your limitations, and also how it relates to the question. Other guidance specifically, as we talked about before, you're looking for 4 that need to be relevant, they need to show knowledge of sources and limitations and fit them to a well-argued response. Okay? And then you've got more mark schemes. We don't go through 12 markers in this because these are a bit more holistic. So when we go through 12 markers, it'll make more sense. Right, and this is a spec paper, which is basically just like an example paper, but it wasn't set. So I'll say, what event is shown on the Greek vase? Okay, so this is it's kind of a factual recall, but you actually need to know what you're looking at. So there, it's a wedding procession, but you need to have known that. Name 2 items made from cloth woven at home. Okay, that's another factual recall about women. 3 marker, describe 3 ways. Okay, again, you're looking for 3 points, and it tells you about information, how to do it in the question. 2 marker, could a female slave help an Athenian wife at home? Again, 2 marker, 2 ways. It's just 1 point per mark. Then we get into a 6 marker. Read source C. In your opinion, do we learn more about wool making or politics from source C? Include references, specific references to source C in your answer. Okay, so this is about, remember, 6 markers. You don't need knowledge prior to the question. All the information you need for that question is in the source it's telling you to look at. Okay, you need 3 points. They need to be well selected and perhaps from all over the thing rather than just one specific part. Okay, and finally, the last 8 marker and the last bit of this video is, the Athenian house was like a prison for Greek women. How far do you agree with this statement? So again, it's another how far do you agree with the statement, and use sources from the insert and include details from other sources in your answer, i.e. you're looking for about 4 points, some from the insert, some from the prescribed sources. You need to show your AO2 and your AO3, which is about showing your knowledge and understanding limitations and fitting it to your answer. Okay, I hope my repetition in this video has made it clear the importance of how to answer these 6 and 8 mark questions, and made it clear why the way we went through the sources in the first 2 parts of this series were done. Okay, I hope this video has been useful. Feel free to do these questions in your own time, although we might do it in class at some point. And yeah, goodbye.